Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of Ikigai Leadership. My name is Judy Harlal, and I'm here with a fellow coach, Judy Berman. Thanks so much for joining us today, Judy. Judy is a leadership and career coach, and she's awesome. Judy, I appreciate you taking time to talk to us today.
Well, Drew, I really appreciate you having me on this podcast. This is great.
Oh, thank you. No, it's awesome to talk to other coaches and hear different journeys, right? And so, as folks are thinking about you and your journey, tell us, where'd you start and how'd you end up where you are now?
Well, I started out my primary career was in the media industry, which back then was called newspapers, and I worked in that for a couple of decades, and it was a very rewarding career. But there came a time around 10 years ago, almost to the day, that it wasn't working for me anymore.
Hmm.
And I decided to do a complete career pivot. Wasn't sure what I was going to do. I ended up taking an assessment that I use in my practice today that pointed me in the direction of becoming a career coach. So it was definitely a turning point for me. I didn't know what career coaching was. And as soon as I took the assessment with someone, I asked if I could become certified in it. And I've done more than 300 of them since then. And I've been building my career and leadership coaching business with that and other tools as well.
Yeah. So we'll talk about the assessment in a moment, but when you made that transition initially, right? When you said it wasn't working for you, what were the signs that you were like, this is something I need to take a step back for myself? What were the big signs for you?
I think I was not enjoying what I was doing
Mm,
anymore. And I was in a situation where I didn't feel I was going to be able to really help people in their careers, which was really what I love doing. I've been a manager since my second year of working. So I really did love being a manager and a leader of big and small teams. And the industry wasn't really in that space at that point of growing and developing people. And I wanted to make that shift because I wasn't getting the kind of satisfaction that I wanted. I had also had to orchestrate a number of layoffs, and I've done that over the years. And I just couldn't do it anymore. I
yeah.
wanted to help people propel forward.
Yeah. And it sounds like the difference making situation for you was the people, right? It was about the people very quickly. I mean, being a manager second year, now you're building a team, not just focusing on yourself. That's a lot of responsibility to take on as in the second year of working. What was that transition like for you when you went from doing the work yourself to managing the whole team now?
It was quite rocky because I was asked to, oh, here, go ahead and manage the people that were your peers. And I think the biggest lesson that I learned that I try to pass on is that sometimes you have to take that leap and you can't necessarily be the friend anymore. You
Hmm.
have to hold people accountable. So you can do that with compassion and with empathy, and that doesn't make you a bad person if you hold people accountable. So that was really the lesson that I continually learned, was how to lead people and still get the job done without taking things personally myself, which I find can be very difficult for people who are people oriented.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think people tend to fall into that category of people pleasing, right?
Mhm.
Or wanting to be everybody's friend. And you think of the Michael Scott analogy, of like, I want everyone to love me, but I also want everyone to fear how much they love me. Right? You
It's a
know,
good one. I like that.
it's hilarious. I love that The Office, that show. It's such a honestly, it's a great illustration of leadership on so many different levels, good and bad, right?
Yes.
Um, but no, what you bring up is a really important point about transitioning from that peer to now managing the people you used to be peers with, and setting those boundaries. Where it's like, okay, yeah, we are still friends outside of work, but
Mhm.
here I am your boss, so I have to, do these certain things that may be uncomfortable. And I think that that's something that people don't necessarily take the time to consider when they're moving up in the
Mhm.
ranks. And so, what were some of the things that pre-assessment, right? What were some things that you looked at for yourself before you got to the assessment? And then we'll get to the assessment after that. But because I'm really curious how that changed, how your leadership changed, and how your view on things changed.
Mm. Well, I think that one of the key events that happened in my life was when I worked for Dow Jones, the Wall Street Journal.
Mm,
And I had been doing marketing my whole career, pretty much. And an opportunity came up for me to relocate and take a completely different job in an operational capacity. I was the 3 people had turned the position down before I was offered it.
mm,
I had absolutely no technical knowledge of what I needed to do. But the person who was my boss and was a mentor through me, for me throughout my career took a chance on me.
mm,
And I uprooted my life and worked on integrating 2 departments that did not see eye to eye. And I had to learn on the ground at in the moment. And that I think was was one of my first major career pivot that I did. And I think that helped make the future ones easier
mm.
because I really did uproot everything. I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. I went from marketing into operations. I was dealing with a team as well as vendors or partners all throughout the Western United States, an area that I had virtually not even explored. So I had to learn a lot of things on the ground.
Yeah.
And I really encourage people in my coaching practice now to make sure that you're actually talking to the people who do the work and get that sort of on the ground knowledge because you can't replace it with understanding what it is people are going through.
Yeah, I think that's really important too, right? Because you're talking about the difference between like the theory and the practice, right? Of like, and I think
Mhm,
people, not to knock any kinds of schools or any kind of thing, but I think there's a big focus on education and like degrees and whatnot, right?
mhm,
And you can, I say this all the time, you can have all the certifications and all the degrees you want, but until you actually go into a job and work in a field, you have no idea what the actual field is like, right?
yeah,
And there's no substitute for that experience. And there's value. Don't get me wrong. There's value to theory, but theory is still theory, right? Applied
mhm.
theory is very, very different.
Mm,
And
that's a
so,
really good way to put it.
yeah, and so what you're talking about is exactly that applied theory of like, yeah, it sounds sexy to manage a team and sound like, yeah, I'm a manager. I got I got people working for me. That's cool. Okay, now what does that mean practically, right? How do you manage those people and those personalities? What happens when conflict inevitably happens? And what you just described too, though, is like that two departments who didn't get along, right? Where's
Mhm.
that in the theory book?
There was nothing really I think that one of the things that I learned and someone who was very wise said to me, your job is actually to listen to what's going on as opposed to do it.
Yeah.
So you can't fix things. You can go in and try to fix things, but really you need to encourage how to fix those things and know that it's a constant battle, if you will. It
Mhm.
really is. And that there's always some new nuance that can come up. And how do you treat the individual? One of the mistakes I often see new leaders make, and entrepreneurs as well, is that they assume that things that motivate them
Mhm.
motivate other people. So it's really getting an understanding of what it is that makes that person, quote unquote, tick, and how to bring out the best in them. And that is not a one size fits all solution.
No, absolutely. We had this. I was in a networking meeting today, and we had this conversation in one of the breakout rooms, and we're talking about everyone's lens, right, and how everyone's lens is different, and we expect people to operate out of our lens. And the second we start being aware of other lenses, the fact that other people have their own lenses, and they can also be right if they even if they disagree with us, right?
Yes.
That's a level of maturity that I think comes with experience and with practice. Again, not it
Mhm.
doesn't come with theory, right? It's something you have to
Mhm.
experience, and you have to have those. It really comes down to having those conversations and getting comfortable accepting differing opinions without hating the other person or something like that, right? Like and making it an emotional response where automatically you're a bad person because you disagree with me,
Yes.
right?
I was just having a conversation with a client about that exact thing yesterday, and how do you bring those two sides together to know that it's okay to disagree, and that somewhere it may not always be in the middle, because sometimes compromise just sort of makes everything kind of bland,
Mhm.
but are there ways that you can find that common ground
Yeah,
through looking through the other person's lens?
yeah, exactly. And it's a muscle, right? It's a muscle we gotta build. And you kind of alluded to this earlier, right? It was like something where by making that initial that big uprooting and moving across the country, you were building a muscle. I mean, you were building a muscle by lifting really heavy weight in that situation. But by doing that, though, now you're acclimated to that kind of a big change, and future changes became easier because you did that to yourself, right?
Yes,
Because you allowed yourself to take that chance and take that risk, and
yes.
that's amazing, and it's a great lesson for people. So fast forwarding now back to the assessment, right? So you took the assessment.
Mhm.
What was the biggest awareness for you that assessment gave you? And if you're okay sharing the assessment, please, if you're open to sharing that, the name
Oh,
of the assessment.
absolutely. I think the aha moment was that I could have a career that would give me the things that I love.
Hmm.
The other thing that it showed me is I had kind of been hiding my entrepreneurial spirit for a while, because I thought, "Oh, I'm just a corporate person." But I came from an entrepreneurial family. I had to help out in the family business at a crisis point, so I kinda remembered that. And the other sort of aha moment I had, tying it back to that going out west and making that change, is in many ways that was almost an entrepreneurial experience,
Mhm.
because my mentor, boss, leader really expected us to run your own business with measurements every day, measurements every month, measurements every quarter, measurements. So it was, I was 3 hours behind the corporate people, and a lot of stuff happens after
Yeah,
after they've all gone home, particularly in the quote unquote newspaper business. So all of those things, I think, brought together that aspect for me of being able to make that transition.
yeah. And when you mentioned entrepreneurial spirit and that kind of mentality, and for me, and I don't know if you agree with this opinion, because it's still an opinion for me, but entrepreneurship for me is about creation. It's about being creative about something, right? Whether it's a business, whether it's your own income streams or whatever, but it's creating something and then iterating on that thing, right? Being able to be flexible and pivot as you need to, and basically be resilient and and adjust as you need to make things work, right? I don't think it's just about business. I think you can be, to your point, you can be entre, entrepreneurial. Jesus, that's a tough word sometimes. Um, in a position where you're still an employee or where you're working for a company, right? Because you're still creating that, you're creating that space, that position for yourself. In your situation, it sounds like you were creating that position that was, navigating a bunch of different things at the same time, right? You have the dynamics with the two different teams. You have the dynamics of moving cross country and creating your own space and making that role yours. What role did the assessment play in your growth into that process? Like, what did it help you focus on?
Mm. Well, one of the things that I loved about the assessment when I was starting out in my coaching was that it pointed out very clearly the areas that I needed to work on. Because if I was going to be a coach, one of the things that I had to focus on was to be more potentially diplomatic in the way that I communicated.
Mm,
My style was completely see the hill, take the hill. We got 5 seconds, let's go.
yeah.
And not everyone wants to hear a message like that, particularly in a coaching environment. You
Yeah.
have to be flexible in the way that you communicate. So that was very important for me to really focus on. And as you said earlier, Drew, practice, being conscious of what it is that I was doing so I could change and modify my communication style and really, instead of being the problem solver, to allow people to solve their own issues. Because one of my early mentor coaches said that it's, when I start thinking that I know better than my client, that's when I need to dial that back. And sometimes clients want us to tell
Yeah.
them what we think, but it's really more powerful if it comes from within.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, whenever I teach new coaches, one of the biggest adjustments that a lot of them have to make is that shift from going to advice first
Yes.
to, and I guess it's a shift between like listening to understand versus listening to respond, right? And it's that my mentality of I know better versus how can I help them be better, right?
Ah,
And it's
mm,
it's it's not about us being showing that we're better or showing that we're anything off. It's really us holding that space, to your
mhm.
point, of like facilitating that discussion with themselves, really, because they're talking through things with themselves and weighing options. I mean, look, 80% of the time our clients already know what to do, whether they admit it or not, but there's
Yes.
something holding them back, right? There's something in their
Mhm.
heads that's holding them back. And our job
Yes.
is to kind of bring that to light and say, hey, this is something that you believe right now. Is this actually true? One, and two, is it actually serving you?
Well, it's so brilliant that you brought that up because that was really what I had to confront about starting my entrepreneurial journey is that I had some beliefs around it that, I was like, "Oh, I really want more stability and I wanted this." And I'm like, but that's really not who I am right now. And I was making some false assumptions and I needed some help to kind of push me in that direction. And
Yeah. And then that phrase of like, that's not who I am right now. That's not who I am. It's not like I'm not this, right? Those are very limiting phrases. And a lot of people
Mhm,
fall into that trap. Like we all do, right? I mean, we're
mhm,
humans, right? We catch ourselves with that. But language, I feel like when we can, and again, tell me if this is your experience,
mm,
but in coaching and getting into coaching, I became painfully aware of language and the power of language and how much it can either
mm.
empower us or limit us, right? Our own language for ourselves, and the way
Yes.
we talk through things with ourselves, and the way we talk to other people, even, right?
Mhm.
It tells us a lot about how we see the world and how we see ourselves, because identity is a big part of that whole conversation, right? Of like, am I an entrepreneur or am I not an entrepreneur?
Mhm.
Am I an employee or am I a business owner? And
Mhm.
am I a morning person or am I a night person? All these things that they can define us, or they can limit us in certain ways too.
Yes, and it's how do you give it a more nuanced lens to it?
Yeah.
Because not all entrepreneurs need to be alike. There are some things that I think go across that are important, but again, depending on who the person is, what their stage in life is, what's important to them right now, what their clients, whether it's a coaching or some other kind of business, expect. It's how do you bring those unique qualities out? I call it people's work DNA.
I like that. I like that. And so if you're okay sharing the assessment, the name of the assessment, I don't know if you're okay with that. If please, that'd be great, because so people can learn more about it. And then tell us, how you do that, use that with your clients right now, and kind of the things that they see when they are faced with these kind of results and the kind of conversations you have.
Great. It's called the Harrison Assessment. It's used globally, so it's not sort of just North America focused. It's been used for more than 25, I think almost 30 years now. Its origin story is in pre-employment screening. But it's so powerful in coaching because it's not technically a personality test, although there may be some personality traits. But what it's measuring is behaviors and tendencies and preferences. And since the way it's constructed, it's not norming you like, well, you're in the top 10% of this, or you're in the bottom 20 here. It's not normative. It's really explaining what your, as I said before, your work DNA. It also has an aspect of what's important to you, because it asks questions around not only what you like to do, but what gets you up and motivated to do those things. What's most important to you? And how fulfilled you are in your current situation with that. So you can really identify where the sort of the pain points are, because everybody has some pain points. I haven't come across in the 300 plus that I've done that there aren't some pain points. However, people are then empowered to make different choices based on that. The assessment takes about 20 to 30 minutes for people to take. It's pretty easy. It's online. I've been doing it remotely, pre-pandemic, no issues. And then it produces very robust reporting that I then review with a client. And we spend time on that. Again, it's not necessarily a perfect formula of the way that I go through them, because different things resonate with different people.
Right.
But it's on the rare occasion that I found that it hasn't been insightful.
Yeah. And I had the opportunity to do one with you, like to have you debrief with me. And honestly, it was fascinating. Like I told you, I really appreciated the approach, because, and I'm sure you had the clients to do this too. Like the clients inevitably are asked, well, how do I rate against everybody else who did this? And it's like, okay, there's no ratings. It's not like you're good if you have this quality, or you're bad if you have that quality. It's just data. It's just straight up like, this is what motivates you. This is what motivates you. And neither one of those is good or bad. It just is the reality. And I love that approach, because it takes people out of that normal way of thinking of like, I'm better than that person, or I have to be better than this person, or work on this, or whatever. And so when you're talking with clients, what are some of the transformations you've seen people have, and or maybe the most impactful to you that you can remember right now? What was the biggest change someone has made for you with you?
I have two stories. One is I had an early careerist who had just started nursing school because his parents and others around him said, oh, this is going to be a growing field, particularly for males. And so he had reached out through his community college to, get some career coaching around this. So I did the assessment, and it was clear to me, but once I saw that there was no overlap between what he wanted and being a nurse. There was no, but it did point out some other options, which he was able to transfer into, which was traveling around the world teaching English as a second language.
Mm.
So he's almost the most extreme experience that I've had, because he was able to get his money back and reinvest it. And it was one of those kinds of experiences. So a lot of the other changes when I work with people are more subtle.
Mhm.
I worked with one woman who at the time couldn't really pursue her entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
She was a military spouse, and it just wasn't the right timing. But having done the assessment, it like kept in the back of her mind the whole time.
Mhm.
And now she has her own very successful business, and has done just an amazing job once her life circumstances changed. So that was one where it took a while. That was like the immediate. And then
Mhm.
there was the longer term one. It took 5 years
Yeah.
for her to pursue that, but the passion never went away. And
Right.
she's been very, very, very happy in that new role for herself.
And it started with that awareness too, right? I mean, I think that that's the important thing, is like that idea would never come to fruition, or
Mhm.
might have taken a lot longer to come to fruition, right?
Yes.
If it hadn't been for that initial awareness, and at least that way she could say, okay, well, now I have an idea of what I want to do, and everything I
Yes.
can do from here on going there. Now I have a direction to go in, right?
Yes.
As
Yes.
opposed to just like, I'm just going to go along for the ride, and then wherever I end up, good luck. I hope I'm happy, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You mentioned something earlier that I think is important. You mentioned it in passing, but I want people to understand that the importance of this. You said it's used globally, the assessment, and I think that's important to highlight because of the cultural differences around the world, right? And
Mhm.
that this is not something that's limited to your point, North America, or a culture in the U.S., or a culture in
Mhm.
UK, or anywhere. It's validated across the world, and that's
Yes.
really powerful because it says a couple of things. One, it's human motivation and human psychology is the same, right? I mean, it's not like
Mhm.
it doesn't. We're still humans, even
Yes.
in Asia and Africa and Europe and South America, right? Like they don't have to be American to be human.
Mhm.
um, but then the other part of that too is that it can really transform people across around the world, right? And transform their lives, and at least empower them to make decisions that can transform their lives, right? I think that's the thing. And so when you're thinking about using this with your clients, you know, what are the things that you say? Hey, listen, you're ready. That's something that you should consider, right? What are the signs your clients would
Mm.
see in themselves of like, I should talk to Judy. I really want to find out more about what I want to do next.
I use the phrase "the messy middle."
Hmm.
So, and it seems to resonate with a number of potential clients, is they know things aren't quite right, but they're not exactly sure what is next. They they're in that restless stage. That's when this assessment, and I think my work with people, is the most effective, because they're taking a proactive approach as
Hmm.
opposed to a reactive approach.
Yeah.
So it's that I know things aren't quite right, but I don't know exactly what path to go on. And the other piece that comes out too is at times there's the lack of confidence. Can I really make this change? Can I do this? Where they may have this, that they really want to do this thing, but they may not have the confidence. And one of the things that the assessment does is it can give and I've heard this exact phrase from multiple people. It gave me the words to talk about what the unique things that I can bring to any role. HR speak is transferable skills, transferable,
Yeah.
but it's really what is it that makes them unique? And while this is an overused phrase too, is that I view all my clients as unicorns.
Hmm.
They're all unique. And how can they take that, what makes them unique and apply that to something else.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, I think that's important again to highlight too, that the idea of like the messy middle, right? Like when you're talking about that, I go back to the phrase pain point. I think pain points are
Mm.
obvious, but it's not always obvious with our clients. I actually err on the side of friction points more so than pain points,
Ah.
right?
Mm.
Because we're not dealing, well, not always. Sometimes there are pain points, obviously we deal with, right? But we're not always dealing with pain points. It may not be something where it rises to the level of pain. It may just be a friction point. It may just be like, I feel something is kind of like not quite working as well as it could do. It could work here, right? And that's where you can have the opportunity for like, okay, well, let me do a little more investigation here. And the investigation is not external, it's internal, right?
Mm.
And so that I think that's where people can at least that's the way I was thinking about it as you were
Mhm.
talking about it. But I think that's really powerful and important for people to think of as being more proactive as opposed to reactive. Because when you get to the point when it rises to the level of pain, it's
Yes.
reactive, right?
Mhm.
If you're talking about friction, I see friction, I feel friction. Let me get proactive before it gets to the level of pain where I need to be reactive, right? Because then it becomes more emergent. So yeah, that's just something I
No,
thought of.
no, thank you for that. That's a really great way to put it. I'm gonna incorporate that. Friction versus pain. I'll take people when they hit the pain. I've
Absolutely.
had clients that have seen me over the years where, I'll get the phone call. It's often a phone call. I just got laid off.
Yeah.
That's pain. But there can be, this is going to sound kind of trite too, but one of the things that I encourage my clients is that they have to be the CEO of their own career.
Yeah.
In today's world, there's a lot of change. There's a lot of momentum around having your own business and also making career changes. Things are not stable.
Right.
And if you are clear, the more clear you are and the more proactive you are on a consistent basis, the more effective and ultimately the more satisfied you're going to be.
100%. Totally agree with that. I love that approach because it really does allow people to look at themselves through a different lens, right? And say like,
Mhm.
okay, well, I'm not wrong or right. I just
Yes.
want to do something differently. I want to do something better, right?
Yes.
Better doesn't mean what you're doing is wrong. Better just means you want to improve, right? So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
awesome. Well, as we're getting up on time here, I do want to ask you the last question to ask everybody,
Mm.
which is, in your journey to where you are right now, who or what were the biggest influences on you and your decisions in your journey? Yeah, whether it's a person, book, movie, TV show, anything.
Mm. Well, I'll bring up a movie because I think it's a movie you like too.
Okay, I always love this.
It's The Replacements.
Yes, I love that movie. I do.
So, one of my favorite lines out of that is, "Do you want the ball when the game is on the line?"
Mm,
And I've actually even used that phrase when I was a leader with someone. And I think it helped create a shift from the I'm making excuses to the I'm going to look at how to come up with a solution. And I really used that as a lens in hiring and developing people
mm,
because having that kind of ownership mentality is key, I think, to success in any chosen career or field.
yeah, that movie has so many good lines. I love that one because the precursor to that is like winners always want the ball,
Yes.
right? And
Mhm.
I really really love that because it goes back. That reminds me of the concept of you know good leaders create followers, great leaders create other leaders,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
that's really what that's what you just said. You saying that makes me think of and thinking
Mhm.
of hiring people who want the ball, right? Because they're
Yes.
going to be leaders one day. Because they're going to take the reins, and that's phenomenal. Well, Judy, how do folks reach out to you if you want to?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm Judy Berman on LinkedIn. My website is coachberman.com, and happy to have discussions with people on a complimentary basis to see, we go back to the beginning, life's too short to be stuck in a bad match. Let's have a conversation, see what's going on with you, and if we would be a good match to work together, to see if I can help you get some clarity and confidence around that.
Awesome. Well, Judy, thanks so much. Everyone, please feel free to reach out to Judy. Her information will be in the description below, so feel free to use links down there. But Judy, this has been a great conversation. I think it's a lot of nuggets for people to take a look at. And if you missed any nuggets, please watch it again, because there was a ton in there. If you didn't get anything, you got to watch that again and pay attention this time. So thanks again, everybody. Stay safe. Judy, thank you again for taking the time. And yeah.
Thank you, Drew. This was great.
My pleasure. Take care, everybody. Stay safe out there. See you next time.